In this lesson, we will get started with MongoDB. MongoDB is a NoSQL database where, unlike MySQL or PostgreSQL, the data is stored in a JSON-like format. And MongoDB is also one of the preferred database when working with Node.js. To get started with MongoDB, we can use cloud database, so we don't need to configure it at our local machine. So you can search for MongoDB Atlas in the Google and click on the link from the MongoDB website. Now, click on the Try Free button. Scroll down a bit and click on Sign Up with Google button to sign up with your Gmail account. Once signed up, you will see the registration success screen and it will automatically redirect after some time. Now, select a goal of your choice. Type of application you will be building. And for language, select JavaScript. Click on Finish button. We will be using free cloud service, so click on the free tier from the list of options. Keep the default values as it is. You can change the cluster name if you want. Now, click on the Create button. Now, we need to create a database user. So enter some name and password for the user and click Create User button. Now, you need to add IP address of your machine so we can access the database from your local machine, and then click Finish and Close button. Now, click on the Network Access menu and we will add a universal IP address, so from anywhere you can access your database. Click on Add IP Address button, then click on Allow Access from Anywhere button. Now, click Confirm. And delete your previously added local machine IP address. Now, go back to your project by clicking on the drop-down menu. To connect our application to this database, we need a connection URL. So to find that out, click on the Connect button. Select Connect Your Application option. This is the database connection URL which we can use in our application. So I will copy that URL and I will add it in index.js file for future reference. So we have this application we created previously. So let's make some changes in the code. Let me remove the extra code we have here which we added to while learning Express.js. And in the CSS file, we can remove the red background color for body. Now, it looks better. Now, to work with MongoDB, we can use a very popular library known as Node.js. Whenever you're working with MongoDB, this is the library which is used all the time. So as you can see, we use connect method to connect to the database. Then we use model method to specify the model or structure of the data you will be storing in the database. If you have worked with SQL databases, then you might know that we have different tables in the database like user table or employee table. However, when working with MongoDB, instead of tables, we call it a collection, and using model method we specify what type of data we're storing in that collection. In this case, it's a cat collection. Now, to install this library, you need to execute npm install mongoose command. You can also search for npm and name of the library to find out more about the npm library. You can see, it's a very popular library. Now, the library is installed. Let's create a db.js file to connect to the database. First, let's start the application using npm start command. Now, in the db.js file, let's first import the mongoose library. Then we can use mongoose.connect method to connect to the database. And here, we can use the MongoDB Atlas connection URL which we copied earlier. So here, as you can see, root is the user and password we need to specify. Let's create a new database user for our application from Database Access menu. You can give any name for the user and also specify the password for that user. Now, instead of root, we will use that username and for password also the newly created password. Now, after the last slash, we need to give the database name that we want to use for our application. You can give any name for it, and if that database does not exist, then it will be created. The connect method returns a promise so we can attach .then and .catch handlers to handle the success and failure of the connection. Here, we will just log it to the console. So if the database connection is successful, .then handler will be executed, otherwise .catch will be executed. Now, we can import this db.js file in the index.js file. We don't need to specify the .js extension as it's considered by default. Oh, we created the db.js file inside public folder, but it should be outside the public folder. So ./db means from the current folder access the db file. Now, let's save the file and check the console. We're getting error connecting to the database. So let's see what's wrong. Oh, we have just specified the database username and password, but we have not saved it yet. Before saving, we also need to specify the role for the user. Select Read and Write to any database option and then click on Add User button. Now the database user is added. Let's save any of the files so NodeMon will run again. We can see now the connection successful message. One thing you should remember is that you should not mention your database credentials like username, password directly in the code. That's a big security issue because anyone will be able to access your database using those credentials. So to fix this, you can create environment variables and store it in .env file. We can name the variable db connection URL and assign a value to it. Now, we can copy the connection URL and assign it to the variable. Make sure you're not adding quotes around the value, otherwise it might not work. You also need to make sure that the .env file is included in the .gitignore file. So you will not push the .env file to GitHub because it contains your private information. Now, we have added this environment variable in .env file. But how can we access it in the code? For that, we need to install the .env npm package. This package allows us to access all the environment variables declared in the .env file. So to install the package, let's execute npm install.env command. Let's start the application again. Now, we can import the .env package in the db.js file where we want to use that environment variable. And we can call the config method from the package. So once we call the config method, all the environment variables declared in the .env file will be accessible through process.env and name of the environment variable. Now, you should be able to see the connection successful message. So always use environment variables to store the secret information and access it using .env npm package. So that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we will use Mongoose library to add and access the database data.